Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking Erich Fromm's deep psychological investigation into the absolute darkest corners of human behavior. If you've ever found yourself watching the news and wondering what on earth drives human beings to do the things they do, well, you are exactly in the right place. We're going to look closely at Fromm's seminal work, The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness, to truly understand the roots of human violence. Published back in 1973, Fromm's groundbreaking clinical study is tackling a really haunting mystery, presented right at the outset of his work. Fromm isn't just looking at minor aggressive acts here. He is conducting a massive global and historical study aimed at understanding a specific, terrifying aspect of human nature that has baffled scientists and philosophers for centuries. And right out of the gate, he hits us with this core question: how can we explain man's lust for cruelty? Think about it. In a world where violence just seems to be constantly increasing in every form, why do humans possess this unique drive to destroy? I mean, animals kill, sure, but for food or defense? Humans? We actually seem to have a lust for cruelty. That is the core puzzle we are going to solve today. And what you should take away from this is a completely new framework for understanding the violent actions of both individuals and entire societies. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll look at man's lust for cruelty, the debate between instincts and behaviorism, defensive versus malignant aggression, the interdisciplinary evidence, and finally, the anatomy of malignant aggression. Section 1. Man's lust for cruelty. Fromm noticed right away that human destructiveness goes far beyond what we see in the animal kingdom. When a lion hunts, it's not being cruel, right? It's just surviving. But Fromm argues that human destructiveness is entirely different. It requires a really deep look into our character. He classifies it not as a simple reflex, but as a passion, a character-rooted passion, exactly like love, ambition, or greed. It is something uniquely human that we cultivate within our own minds. Moving on to Section 2, Instincts versus Behaviorism. This perfectly illustrates the huge academic deadlock of that era. On one side, you have the instinctivists, championed by thinkers like Konrad Lorenz. They basically argued that we are simply born this way, that destructiveness is inherited from our animal ancestors, like some sort of biological ticking clock. But then, on the flip side, you've got the behaviorists, like B.F. Skinner, maintaining the exact opposite. They claimed humans have zero innate traits, and that absolutely everything, including extreme violence, is purely the result of social conditioning. It's the ultimate nature versus nurture debate, taken to the absolute extreme. Which brings us to Section 3, defensive versus malignant aggression. So Fromm steps in and totally breaks this theoretical deadlock with a really revolutionary middle path, dividing aggression into two entirely distinct categories. The first category is defensive aggression. Now, this is the type of aggression we actually do share with animals. It's a completely natural, biologically adaptive impulse. If a person or an animal is cornered and their life is threatened, they will fight back. Makes sense, right? This type of aggression is designed purely to ensure survival. It has a clear evolutionary purpose, and the key thing here is that once the threat is gone, the aggression stops. But then we have Fromm's definition of the second category, malignant aggression. And this is the peculiarly human passion to destroy. This is where a person kills or inflicts cruelty without any biological or social purpose whatsoever. It doesn't help the species survive. In fact, it actively harms it. Fromm argues that this malignant destructiveness is not instinctive at all. It is a strictly human character trait. Section 4, the interdisciplinary evidence. To prove this dual aggression theory and really show that malignant aggression isn't just an animal instinct, Fromm essentially turns into a scientific detective. He realized he couldn't just rely on psychoanalysis, so he pulled crucial data from a massive variety of scientific fields: neurophysiology, animal behavior, paleontology, and anthropology. He sought out the foremost experts in these fields to build a really comprehensive case against the purely instinctivist view that we are just genetically programmed to be cruel. Systematically dismantling the old theories, Fromm takes on the idea of man the hunter. He uses paleontological and anthropological data to prove that early prehistoric humans were absolutely not inherently destructive predators. By looking at the fossil record in ancient settlements, he demonstrates that early societies actually lacked the kind of massive, cruel warfare that instinctivists claimed was just baked into our DNA. Check this out. Fromm analyzed 30 different primitive tribes and categorized human societies into these three distinct systems. System A tribes were life-affirming and peaceful, proving that harmony is possible and has actually thrived in human history. System B tribes had some aggression, but it wasn't destructive, and System C tribes were highly destructive and cruel. What you should take away from this is profound. Because peaceful, life-affirming societies exist and thrive, destructiveness cannot be a universal, biological human instinct. If it were, every single tribe would fall into System C. Cruelty, therefore, is cultivated by specific cultural and psychological conditions, not our genetics. And our final stop, Section 5, Anatomy of Malignant Aggression. Before we look at these figures, I want to emphasize that we are impartially looking at Fromm's psychological diagnosis of these men's character-rooted passions. The sources use these men strictly as scientific, clinical case studies of human destructiveness. Fromm is not making political statements here. He is simply mapping out the psychological anatomy of how malignant aggression manifests in different human characters. So the crucial point is how Fromm maps these different manifestations of the destructive passion based on their biographies and behaviors. He diagnoses Joseph Stalin with non-sexual sadism, a desire for absolute, unrestricted control over others. He diagnoses Heinrich Himmler with anal hoarding sadism, characterized by a chillingly orderly, pedantic approach to destruction, treating mass death like it's a mere bureaucratic ledger. And finally, he diagnoses Adolf Hitler with something entirely different and even more extreme, the necrophilic character. In Fromm's framework, necrophilia isn't just the traditional definition you might be thinking of. It is an intense attraction to all that is dead, decaying, and purely mechanical. In Fromm's analysis, Hitler's necrophilia wasn't just a behavioral trait, but a consuming passion to turn all that is alive into dead, mechanical matter. It is the ultimate opposite of a life-affirming drive. It is literally the worship of destruction for its own sake. We're going to end this explainer with a really provocative thought drawn directly from Fromm's final chapter titled The Epilogue on the Ambiguity of Hope. It can be incredibly heavy to study these dark passions, but Fromm did it for a reason. He believed that by investigating and accurately diagnosing our darkest traits, by finally understanding that cruelty is not some inescapable biological instinct, but a character pathology, we can actually find hope. So the question we leave you with today is this. Is understanding the anatomy of our destructiveness the necessary first step to finally curing it? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into Erich Fromm's vital work. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.